Hi everyone, my name is Eva. I'm 18 years old and I'm from County Tipperary, and today I'll be sharing my faith journey with you. I am very blessed to be able to say that God has always been a part of my life, for as long as I can remember. However, although he was always present to me, I didn't always make myself present to him. Being born and raised in a traditional Catholic household, the faith was planted in me from a young age, growing with me as I got older. I went to Mass on Sundays, said my prayers each night, and even went to the occasional prayer meeting with my parents, which more often than not was with great reluctance, but the tea and biscuits afterwards made up for it. I had a good moral compass, but I saw God as this powerful, authoritative, fatherly figure up in the clouds, who people went to in time of need. He was very much up here, and not so much in here. When I prayed to him, it was for distant things like the souls in purgatory. I never turned to him in times of personal need. That said, I still trusted him and never once doubted his existence or the potential power of his influence. But things quickly started to change as I transitioned into the teenage years. God became more of a nice idea than a lived reality. When I entered secondary school, I soon realised that my beliefs made me feel different to others, but I was okay with that. I became known as the innocent one among my friends. I used to go into school and hear the girls talking about impure things and using slang terms that I didn't quite understand. And when they saw my confusion, they throw their eyes to heaven and say, "Oh, Eva." So filled with self-doubt, I started to question who I was and what I believed. I also asked myself if my obedience to God was more of an obstruction than it was an aid, because I sometimes felt like I was missing out and that my faith was overly restrictive. It was also during this time, when I was about 12 years old, that my uncle, who also happens to be my godfather, approached me with a challenge. He said if I could abstain from drinking and smoking until I turned 18, he would give me a sizable sum of money for my 18th birthday. The competitive streak in me wasn't going to back down that easy, so we shook hands and struck a deal. I didn't realise it at the time, but in hindsight, I see how this helped prevent me from straying off the path too far, especially when it came to drinking. Although it would have been easy to turn away from God and follow others around me, I didn't, because there was always something in me that kept on resisting. When I was 15, I went on a pilgrimage to Medjugorje with my nanny. I had been before and remembered really enjoying it, so I was looking forward to going back, but didn't have any high expectations. Throughout the week, I felt a strong desire to go to confession. I didn't want to go, but I knew I had to. Still, I kept resisting this urge each day. There was one sin in particular that weighed down my heart. It had been clinging on to me for years, and I was too afraid to let it go. Then, before I knew it, it was our last few days there, and it was a matter of now or never. So I bundled up the courage and got myself in line. When I went in, I was greeted by this lovely American priest. I started confessing my sins one by one, and initially everything was okay. But then I knew I had to confess this one sin in particular that I had been holding on to. I was terrified, but somehow God gave me the courage to confess it. Once I finally got it out, I burst into a fountain of tears and couldn't stop. It was unlike anything I'd ever experienced before. These were tears of pure joy. I was so overcome and overwhelmed with the power of God's mercy. I have one distinct memory after this moment that has stayed with me until this day. Still sobbing, I was outside St. James's Church and just stopped and stood still. It's difficult to describe, but I heard Jesus' voice speak from within me, saying, "I love you," over and over again. I felt so free. It was there and then that I fully understood the extricating power of confession as an antidote to the guilt I experienced as a result of past mistakes. In the summer of that same year, when I was 16, I came home from my summer job one day, and my mom informed me that she booked me into this summer camp called Camp Veritas. Now, when she told me this, I wasn't very impressed. That same week, she was going abroad on holidays, and I was secretly hoping to possibly get a last-minute flight and go with her, but got different plans. So I went along to Camp Veritas. I remember on the car journey feeling quite apprehensive and unsure of what to expect for the week ahead, but it's safe to say that it didn't disappoint. I was so inspired to see a group of young people on fire with their faith. We had daily mass, adoration and games, and here I saw many young people kneeling down, fully engaged with their eyes focused on the Lord. I had a similar experience the following month at a Youth 2000 retreat. This was all something that I hadn't witnessed before. I experienced hope and joy on a whole new level, and suddenly I didn't feel so alone because I knew I wasn't the only one practicing my faith. I had such a lovely experience at these retreats and made some really good friendships, but my relationship with God still wasn't very personal. The following year, things got a bit difficult between online school lockdowns and a lack of socialising. Life was very uncertain, and I started to frequently suffer from anxiety. I found that I tried to deal with it alone and didn't turn to God. Then after Christmas, my personal prayer went from happening every night to a few days a week to the night just before the exams. Over the course of a few months, my prayer life completely deteriorated and became practically non-existent. I had substituted it with studying friends. This was then only made worse because of lockdown, as there was no access to weekly mass or retreats and the pilgrimages that I needed to boost my faith. As I was approaching the age for going out, we were still in lockdown, so unfortunately the pubs were put to a halt until last summer after months of being closed. I was so excited to start experiencing the social life that had been awaiting me. It suddenly started to appear more attractive than I had in my early teens. So then I started compromising my morals. That said, I wasn't willing to completely abandon them, but I was willing to distance myself. I only realise now that my deteriorating prayer life was having a knock-on effect on my moral compass. I thought I could do a Hannah Montana on it and live the best of both worlds, but inside it tore me apart. And now I understand the truth is, it can't be done. You are either with God or against him. There is no middle ground. In this period, I see how the blind obedience I had as a child now morphed into a willful blindness. So once the exams were over, I started drinking, going out, meeting fellas and all that jazz, and I thought it was great. I was finally like everyone else. I was living according to society's standards instead of living up to God's. But I soon discovered that this lifestyle was very superficial and unfulfilling. When I was in Medjugorje the 3 years previous, I bought a gold chain and a crucifix, which I always wore. It had become a part of me and I'd never taken it off. But I remember one evening in particular during this time, I was at home getting ready to head out that night with my friends, and just before leaving the house, I looked into the mirror and noticed the crucifix around my neck. Thinking it looked out of place, I took it off and replaced it with a necklace of a heart instead. My family noticed this a few days later and asked me why I wasn't wearing it anymore. I told them that I just wanted to change, but there was much more to it than that. Looking back, I now realise that wearing that cross symbolised something I didn't believe, or at least didn't want to. I was afraid to trust God, and this illustrates how my faith came into conflict with my actions. Because if your beliefs don't change your actions will change your beliefs. I thought I was chasing freedom, but in reality I was chasing feelings, and I was letting them control my decisions. After some time, I eventually realised that this so-called happiness was in fact not even close to what real happiness is, because it came with two things: conditions and consequences. Conditions being having to drink, dress, and act in a certain way, and the consequences were the feeling of regret, shame, or feeling hungover. When I grasped this, I knew it was never happiness to begin with. My imitation of others was leading me to become intimidated by God. Yet even though I didn't fully recognise him, he was still rescuing me. I see how indirectly God was using these distractions to give me direction, because through these experiences, he was making clear to me where I wanted to go in life and what it is I really wanted out of life. It was also around this time I started thinking more seriously about the future. I'd always presumed I'd go straight into college after school, but after doing oodles of research and reading the prospectuses cover to cover, it became apparent that no course was sticking out to me. I entered this never-ending cycle of going back and forth. I hadn't a clue what I wanted to do with my life. I recalled a few years previous when I was at Camp Veritas. It was there that I heard about Holy Family Mission for the first time. But initially I thought, no way, that's not for me. At the time, the only incentive I had were the hoodies, which I can now confirm are very comfortable. A friend of mine was in Holy Family for a couple of years, and one evening his mom came to visit. At the time, I wasn't sure about coming here because I knew it would be a big change from what I was used to. I ended up talking to her for hours about this experience, and it sounded amazing. Then she asked me one very simple question that helped me to make my decision. When discussing the options of college or coming to Holy Family, she asked me what would bring me closer to God, and instantly I knew that I'd be coming here for a year. Since coming to Holy Family Mission, I can say with confidence that I truly know this is where I'm meant to be. I'm surrounded by the most amazing bunch of young people and have made the most precious friendships and memories that I'll cherish forever. There's never a dull moment. Every day is filled with so much joy, fun and laughter. That said, it's not without difficulties. In particular, I struggle with being punctual. I do love the late night chats and I'm always getting in trouble for not being in bed for curfew. Although the beginning was a struggle, my relationship with God has come on leaps and bounds. I feel like I know him better. I have learned that prayer is not just something you say or do, but it's a relationship and it's also a way of life. I also feel like I've gotten to know myself a lot better. As a friend of ours once said, once you know who you are, who you are will come. Last week, I came across this poem for the first time, and I feel like the first 4 lines really encompass the stage I'm at with my faith right now. It's called The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot, and it begins like this. April is the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of dead land, mixing memory and desire, stirring dull roots with spring rain. In this poem, I interpret April not so much as a month, but as a reoccurring season in life, a beautifully painful transition of growth from the old to the new, a time of discovery, learning, and revival. This year has been one of the biggest blessings of my life, and I'm so grateful to have had this opportunity. Thank you so much for your support, and know that I'll be keeping you all in my prayers. God bless.